Hey ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Redolessence. Welcome back to another video. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at a fragrance by the company Haramain, and this one is called Opulent Saffron, so make sure to stay tuned. So this fragrance was released in 2019, so not too long ago, and the company is Haramain. I actually have a few of their fragrances, and from the ones that I do own, they seem to be inspired by more popular niche or designer fragrances. There are some that I haven't quite yet figured out, and perhaps they are original releases, but I do know that a lot of them have that hint of familiarity to something that I've tried already in the past. And I would venture to say that that is certainly the case with this fragrance as well. Now, when I was looking at the note breakdown, there are notes of amaretto or almond, I suppose, heliotrope, suede leather, rose, bergamot, a ton of different notes. But as soon as I got my nose on it, to my disappointment, it didn't have those notes in it, and I'm a huge fan of almond and heliotrope. However, it is an excellent fragrance, and it's one that I've actually been wearing a lot over the past couple of days since I received it in the mail. I haven't worn this for 7 days straight or anything like that. I've worn it maybe 2 or 3 times, but even in those 2 or 3 times, the DNA of the fragrance is so similar to something that I've smelled in the past and something that I actually own and that I've owned for many years now, that I can speak about it with a great degree of confidence. So once again, the name is Opulent Saffron, not to be confused with one of their other fragrances, which is called Opulent Sapphire. Very similar name, but this is the orange one, this is the blue one, and perhaps I'll be doing a review of this one in the very near future as well. But online, it's actually gotten compared to Amouage's Blossom Love, which is a woman's fragrance. I believe I'm getting the name correctly. However, I don't get the comparisons between the two, and the Amouage fragrance is actually one that I have tried in stores, and I love the way that that one smells. Not to suggest that I don't love the way that this one smells. I actually really enjoyed the smell of this one, but I'm very eager and excited to tell you what I get from the smell and what I think this one compares to. But let's go ahead and start things off by taking a quick look at the really awesome presentation. So the fragrance itself comes in this box with a really cool feel on the outside. It just has the name of the fragrance here towards the bottom and Haramain written towards the top. This says Eau de Parfum, and it's a 100 milliliter bottle. And inside that box, you will actually find another box that has this same sort of felt texture on the outside here. Really interesting. Kind of looks like a Bluetooth speaker, kind of a funny presentation, but I think it also looks really cool. It opens up just like this, and then you see a silhouette of the base on the bottom here in which the bottle rests. And here's what the bottom of my box looks like in case you're looking to authenticate your purchase. The bottle itself is actually nearly identical to the box. It's just a little bit smaller. It opens up just like this. And there's the entire bottle without the cap. The distribution on the atomizer is nice and wide. Let's continue with the smell. So as soon as this fragrance opens up, the first note that I'm gonna get from it, or that my nose picks up at least, is this suede leather note. And I was not really expecting to get that note because there are a couple of reviews on online fragrance forums and websites, and they've made comparisons to other fragrances, not necessarily the one that I was able to pinpoint right away. And perhaps it's the use of the saffron note, which to my surprise, at least according to Fragrantica.com, is not in the note breakdown, and it left a lot of people scratching their head asking, where's the saffron? But I definitely do get it in this fragrance as soon as I smell it. And whether it's in there in a synthetic form, which I'm guessing 99% chance is the case, but it actually reminds me a lot of Tuscan Leather by Tom Ford. And Tuscan Leather is also one of those fragrances that contains leather, but it also has this sweet nuance about it. And perhaps when you look in the breakdown, one may be convinced or led to believe that the sweetness is on account of the heliotrope or the almond or that sort of almond liqueur amaretto vibe. But it's really on account of like a berry nuance, and that's exactly what I get from this one. I mean, it registered in my mind in half a second. I sprayed it and I said, oh, Tuscan Leather. And I know there's a difference between ombre leather and Tuscan Leather, but I really do get that amplified berry sweetness in this one that makes it lean much, much closer to Tuscan Leather by Tom Tom Ford. And of course, it's a DNA that's been played around with by many different brands on many different occasions. And I think in the case of this particular fragrance, it's done in quite an excellent way. And you're getting a lot of juice. I'm looking at the box right now because there is an exterior to it, as I showed in the presentation segment, and this is a 3.3 ounce, so it translates to 100 milliliters. So for the price, you are getting something that's relatively more inexpensive than Tom Ford Tuscan Leather, and I'm basing it solely off of an MSRP standpoint. And you're getting something that's quite concentrated and something that performs really, really well. I mean, this one lasted on my skin 8 to 9 hours. Tuscan Leather does last a long time on my skin. It's actually one of the longest lasting fragrances. But I don't quite remember how much I paid. I think it was closer to 200, a little over 200 for the 50 ml. And here you're getting twice that much for not nearly as much in terms of price. So I do think it's a better bang for your buck when it comes to Tom Ford Tuscan Leather alternatives. I know there are a lot of them that have sort of flooded the market nowadays. So I think it's up to us to sort of look around and see what the best alternative is. But this one is a solid alternative, really good performance. I'm not saying it's 100% exactly the same as Tuscan Leather, but it's unquestionable that you're going to spray it and you're going to be immediately reminded of Tuscan Leather by Tom Ford. And saffron, I might add, is also used in the synthesis of a lot of leather accords because, as I'm sure you know, or maybe you don't, leather is a fantasy note in perfumery. And so there's no way to actually distill the essence from like a leather fabric or something like that. And so saffron could be used, or some animalic notes, perhaps a little bit of civet if you're going for a more animalic leather nuance. But in the case of this one, yes, I actually do pick up the saffron, even though Fragrantica.com doesn't list it as a note. And I think this is an awesome fragrance. Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather is one of the first Tom Ford fragrances that I picked up, of course, alongside Noir de Noir, Tobacco Vanille, and Oud Wood. Those were the first 4 Tom Ford private blend fragrances that I ever picked up. And so it does have a sentimental place in my heart, and it's one of the fragrances that I really enjoy wearing. And so for that reason, in order to conserve what is left in my bottle of Tuscan Leather, what with reformulations happening all the time, I would like to wear this one in place of Tuscan Leather, because I am getting tantamount performance and longevity. And so I do think that this is a solid scent with actually a really cool presentation as well. And just keep in mind, you're not going to get something that's 100% similar to Tuscan Leather, but I would venture to say it comes like 95% close. So you are going to get not necessarily a carbon copy, but something that could very easily fill in as a substitute. Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I am having a hard time saying that this is a unique fragrance just because it does remind me an awful lot of Tuscan Leather by Tom Ford. However, on the flip side to that, I do think it's a fantastic smell. It's one that I absolutely love, and we've seen many different houses and many different companies sort of put their own twist on Tuscan Leather and sort of play around with that aroma chemical and that sort of saffron leather vibe to sort of make it their own. But I think the proof is in the pudding that this is a time-tested, tried and true DNA, and one that has really resonated with a lot of consumers out there. And so it doesn't come as much of a surprise that there is a fragrance by Haramain, and there's actually a few by Haramain that sort of utilize this note breakdown. Coincidentally, there's another fragrance, I believe, called Junoon Rose that has the same exact note breakdown as this fragrance, also by the same company. I haven't gotten my nose on that one, so I wonder if it actually does smell the same, or if there are others within the line that have the same note breakdown and sort of been rehashed into a different presentation. But that's up to me to investigate, I suppose, unless you want to look into it yourself. Longevity on this one, like I mentioned earlier on in the video, was about 8 to 9 hours, so it did last a long time on my skin. Very impressive, I should say. In terms of the projection, great for the first 2 to 2.5 hours. I don't think it became a skin scent up until about that 6.5 to 7 hour mark. It was really going strong. And I think it's because of those bass heavy notes. They just seem to linger around for a long time. And as the name implies, Opulent Saffron. Saffron goes hand in hand with the synthesis of that leather accord. And the leather does reside in the base where it sort of lasts for a long time. In terms of the versatility, it is compromised a little bit. I think this is the type of fragrance that one would enjoy wearing when the weather is a little bit colder outside. My good friend Dan actually hit me up on Facebook today, and he showed me a video where it was actually snowing in his neck of the woods. So despite the fact that it is kind of warming up a little bit, you know, we are in the midst of spring. I know in some regions of the world it's still quite cold to the point where it's snowing. So I think you can definitely pull this off on a cold day, or maybe like a cooler spring night or summer night or something like that. And there's just something about this DNA with the leather and the sweeter nuances that I can see working well in a formal scenario. And whenever you do think of leather, you think of exotic. And so I know a lot of companies like Pure Distance, they have a fragrance called Pure Distance M, which is said to smell like the inside of an Aston Martin, I believe. And so whenever you think of leather, you think of luxury goods, you think of something really high scale and high end. And so I would venture to say that that is also the case with this fragrance as well. Definitely something that I would wear dressed up. In terms of the presentation, I actually think it's pretty cool. It's quite different. I know it looks a little bit like a Bluetooth speaker, but I actually like the way that it looks. It's definitely different and it stands out among my shelves of perfumes. And if I were to give this fragrance a final assessment, I would say that this is a wonderful alternative, although not a substitute necessarily, to Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. It comes very, very close, very similar DNA. The note breakdown would have you believe otherwise, but I do find it to be very, very, very similar to Tom Ford's Tuscan Leather. But this one is a fraction of the price from what I remember reading online. I do think it's a wonderful fragrance, really cool presentation, really great performance, good longevity, good projection. And so if you do have an option of sampling it, definitely make sure you get your nose on it. If I find any sort of e-commerce, I'm going to leave a link to it down below. So definitely make sure to check it out. So that's all I have for you today. That was my quick look. I guess it's been over 10 minutes. I'm not really looking at the timer or anything, but that was my take on Opulent Saffron by Haramain. If you own or have tried any of the fragrances by this company, maybe even this specific one, I would love to know what you think. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Also, if you are new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, I would really appreciate it if you could support this channel by subscribing to it. Please just go ahead and click that red subscribe button in the corner, and also make sure to enable notifications by clicking on the bell icon right next to it. This way, whenever I do upload future fragrance related content, it will get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of my future uploads. Thanks again for watching. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.